Welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. My name is Jim Johnson. This is where we turn chaos into wisdom. 25 years ago, in my first chaos report, I wrote, if you begin with failure and learn to evaluate it, you will also learn to succeed. Failure begets knowledge. Out of knowledge, you gain wisdom, and it is with wisdom that you can become truly successful. In this program, we hope to turn chaos into wisdom. So today, our program is on demo, and we have the world's leading expert, the person that wrote the book on demo, and why demo is so important to enterprise-wide development and maintenance, and how that it can improve the use of infinite flow. So my guest is Hans Mulder. Hans, take it away.
Well, DEMO is an acronym of Designing and Engineering Methodology for Organizations. So it means that it is a way of thinking, actually. So how can you understand the human-centric approach towards organizations? And that is an approach which already started in the 1990s with support from academia and from practice, and which led to some remarkable projects, which I would like to talk about in this interview, if possible, Jim.
Okay, great. So can demo capture the current process and then provide a method to change the process and keep it updated?
Right. Well, the example I would like to give is an example which I, designed during my PhD research at the university, which is in the construction industry. So you have, for building a bridge, about 70 to 80 different organizations involved. So you have a very complex value chain. You know, an end-to-end business process for building a bridge is a tremendous effort. And what you need in that approach is a way of thinking in how can we be all, on the same page? How have we all have the same understanding of building that bridge? And how can we support that with the right tool set? So what DEMO provides you is an accurate way of describing responsibilities, the competences needed, and the products you're going to, produce. And from that on, if you have that mindset of collaborating through a value chain, you can choose to use your own software with APIs, or you can use software as a service, or you can just buy a package which involves how DEMO operates in a business process. And that is actually very clear. It is about the customer, could be an internal customer, and the producer could also be an external producer. And they need to go to certain transaction steps. Like, what is my request? What are you going to promise? What are you going to produce? What are you going to state? And what are you going to accept? And those are only 5 of the steps which we call the happy flow. But there are also, negotiations. I cannot promise, I cannot accept, or I want to revoke my earlier statement. And those 19 transaction statuses are part of the way of thinking. They are being trained through project managers in the construction industry, but they also included in the software packages. So it means that you have the opportunity to do real-time digital transaction-based monitoring on your processes in a project. And that has led to some remarkable results, such as being earlier than planned with your end results, less costs, and more satisfactory results. So I think that DEMO as a way of thinking is agnostic of the technology being used. However, the technology must adhere to the concepts of what are the actors, what are the transactions, and what is my, business process. If that is something which is being done in a coherent set, so it is not just an IT project, but it is an organizational project in which you work together, you can see remarkable, excellent results.
So would you characterize DEMO as capturing the human process, and we don't get into the actual technology process. We're just talking about what the human people have to do to make the flow work.
Yeah, so what you can do with this approach is you can support it directly with software packages, for instance. But it is still the decision makers which say, well, this is my request, this is my promise. They can also see that from a large set of projects, because nowadays more than 5,000 organizations are using this approach, which is called the VZ approach, the vision on your, let's say, organization. It's also mandatory when you're doing large constructional projects for the government. So it is the entire chain which is in place. And you can look at the data from former projects. So you can see, what did we do last time? What was helpful? What can we improve? So you can learn from earlier projects as well. And by implementing just very easily, you can do it every day, changing, let's say, your transaction patterns, you can anticipate in the project on changes, end to end. So you can also see, if you are part in the project, what does it mean for me? What does it mean for my activities?
We are taking a break from our show to talk about gaining wisdom from our success ladder benchmark. Every software project has risk. This is a bet, just as much as buying a lottery ticket or going to casino. However, do you know your odds? Do you know how to improve your odds? Our success ladder benchmark gives you your odds of success by profiling your project against 50,000 cases in our chaos database. It also gives you hints on where you can improve your odds. There are only few inputs and 6 runs in the benchmark. After each run, the benchmark will indicate your chances of success. The Success Ladder benchmark is part of our membership. You can benchmark as many projects as you want and even play what-if games. You can change this or change that, and each run will tell you your chances of success. To get your Success Ladder benchmark, go to standishgroup.com. Now back to our show.
So yes, that would mean that this way of realization, I would consider that continuous. I would consider that to be not only in execution, but also improving. And it is without, let's say, the thing that it is a project as IT. It is not doing your business, and it supports your IT. So this has some characteristics which we could consider as being flow.
Okay, so if I'm starting out a business unit to implement flow with a business unit, I can use Demo to map the process in the business.
Well, that is what you can do if you have chosen for a, let's say, software application layer, which is based on Demo. So you really need Demo as itself is a methodology. So it's the book, it is the way of thinking. It is getting people trained in the right way of communicating in the business processes. That is human-centered. But when you are applying those principles in practice, and you are doing it on a basis that the entire, let's say, transactions are being supported by tools, then indeed we have the opportunity to change this on a daily basis. Yeah, and that means that it is applicable for, let's say, more than just this example of the construction industry. You could also use it in healthcare. You could use it in governmental processes or in supply chains or whatever. But what is first, namely, are we on the same page? Do we know what the end product is? Do we know the bill of material which is composed, let's say, in the transactions? Do we know who is responsible for executing which of those transactions and who is then the initiator? And if that's clear, if those, let's say, mapping is being done, as you just mentioned, then implementing that, let's say, into a software environment, that is really what is helpful. because most of the time we are just looking for the software package. But that is already a choice. You first have to figure out what is my collaboration. So that flow, I think, should be handed first towards the organization, towards the partners, and then the implementation goes very rapidly. So we also saw that in the past, for starting a large construction project and having the IT in order, it could take more than a year. Now you can see it has been done in days, and because actually you are reusing also the knowledge of former projects. So, and because everybody is trained on the same methodology, it goes very rapidly because people understand, oh yes, the last 10 times I also did that approach. Okay, right. So this is my responsibility, that's your responsibility. I'm using this tool, you're using that tool, we're using the same data set. Okay, let's go. So that is, I think, what is very different from if you say, well, let's first find a package. Well, then you are not on the same page already. Right?
So we're kind of looking at the future and massive changes, especially by 2025, with things like, the metaverse and Bitcoin and massive changes for organizations. Do you think having a demo, enterprise-wide demo, so they can see their whole end-to-end organization and be able to make changes would help them in these massive changes?
I like the example of a blockchain because I wrote a book 2 years ago about the fact chain. And the fact chain actually is what those transactions are creating as facts. And if you would just store that in a decentralized environment and you call that blockchain or whatever, that's interesting because you don't want to have, let's say, a copy paste. You want to know exactly what was then at that time and who did it, and be very secure about it. So I think that the concept of blockchain are very well implemented when thinking first about the facts. What are the facts we are going to address? And that also actually leads to a redesign of your business processes. Let me give you an example. You could say, I will store the diplomas of a student in the blockchain. But that is not really a fact. That is just a form. That is just a paper. You can store that, of course, or you can store it with an index somewhere else. You can also say, let's have all the different exams of the students. And when the lecturer and the student are agreed that this has been done, then the examination board will say, this exam has been passed. Then you're only storing the facts of the exams. And when that matches towards the coherent set of the diploma, you will receive your diploma, including all those exams you have passed. So that means that thinking of blockchain is also thinking of renewal of what is really the essence. Is it the formulas we're going to store, or is it the transaction, in this case, between a lecturer and a student doing an exam, and store that as a fact, and then we can derive towards a diploma. And that can be presented on paper, on PDF, whatever you want. But the real facts we're going to change are the exam facts.
Well, thanks, Hans. This has been very enlightening. And thank you for being part of the program. I want to thank our guest and our panelists for being part of the show. And thank you for being part of the show. I hope we have given you a few minutes of wisdom. We look forward to seeing you next time on Wisdom Wednesday. This is your host, Jim Johnson.